Hello my friends, my name is Artur and I am an Estonian YouTuber. Kansas and Missouri have some beef between them. Did you know about that? Well, I didn't, but I found this history video from Mr. Beat. And turns out they do have beef amongst them, and I don't know if it carries out to today, but I'm interested in it. So we're gonna watch it, educate ourselves from it, and see if it still exists today. So Kansas apparently hates Missouri. It's gonna be a longer video, but before we start, I want to tell you guys what I'm up to. Recently, I started to dig Forest Brothers bunker underneath the ground. You know who were the Forest Brothers? They were the Estonian freedom fighters going to the forests, running away from the Soviet Union and fighting the Soviet Union publicly, defying the law of Stalin, basically. They went to the forests, they dig underground tunnels, underground bunkers, and they lived there, attacking the Soviet columns as much as they could, sometimes just surviving. Now we try to do the same thing. We try to just build a bunker with our bare hands and shovels, no machinery used. Check the clip out. We're building an authentic bunker of the Forest Brothers. Forest Brothers are the Estonian freedom fighters who went and ran away to the forest from the Red Army, from the Stalin terrors. So this was a bunker. We all digged it ourselves. This takes about 24 tons of dirt outside. It's a lot of work. We're gonna put wood inside, a stove inside. We're gonna build it authentic. I'm gonna keep you posted. I think it's pretty cool, but let me tell you, it takes a lot of time. It's much harder than you think. Think about digging a grave, for example. Very difficult task, very difficult. If you have seen it in the movies or in The Walking Dead, they dig a lot of graves there, and just watch it, oh, they're digging a grave. It's truly a difficult task. It takes a lot of energy. So I do hope you don't have to do it. Alright, enough about that now. We will see what's up with Kansas. Hey, if you're from Kansas, what up? Why you hate Missouri? What did Missouri do to you? We'll find out.
Well, hey there, I'm Mr. Beat. Many outside of the United States don't realize that there are a lot of states that don't like each other. But
yeah, you wouldn't actually realize that, because US seems like one great country, everybody loves each other, but actually there is beef. Texas and California, for example, maybe Texas and Washington, and turns out Kansas and Missouri. So there are other states also, I think.
Rivalries are a proud tradition here, and it goes much beyond sports. For most of my life, I have lived in Kansas. As a matter of fact, I was born and raised here, so it makes sense that I first look at why Kansas hates Missouri. Meanwhile, Cypher, who currently lives in New Mexico, is going to look at why New Mexico hates Texas. So be sure to check out that video after you're done watching this one.
Well, it's like middle school or preschool, you know. Why this dude doesn't like this dude likes this girl, why don't they like each other? Seems like little children drama, but no, oh no, it's very political and very real, and we're about to find out.
But first, why does Kansas hate Missouri?
It all started with one of the worst laws in American history, the Kansas-Nebraska Act. By the 1850s, many Americans were illegally moving to what would become Kansas. Most of them came for that sweet, cheap farmland, ignoring the earlier promises to give much of the area to Native Americans who had previously been pushed out of their homes back east. After talks picked up about building a transcontinental railroad through the area, Congress went to work trying to come up with a law to make Kansas a territory and give it the infrastructure it needed to allow settlement. It wasn't easy. You see, there was the slavery issue. Americans were divided, go figure, about the expansion of slavery out west. According to the Missouri Compromise, passed back in 1820, any new territory created north of 3630 parallel and west of Missouri couldn't have slavery. So,
that is so strange. Why would they just make this parallel line and make this the term not to be a slave state? Why this line? It's just a line on Earth. What does it matter? What does the line matter? It's the 38th parallel line, right? It's like just a random geographical line, and we suddenly have a line to determine whether you will become a slave state or not. I figure a lot of people would be mad about this. This line that doesn't mean anything would mean so much to them. And also, looking at this map, we have the north, we have the south, but all of this gray area, was this back then just not organized? Was it the states were not yet fully formed and it was just not yet occupied area? There was no settlers here? Maybe it's too early in the US history to yet talk about the West.
Missouri would be the last slave state north of 3630. However, pro-slavery folks felt if Kansas was a territory, it should also have slavery. Since they weren't getting slavery in the desert Southwest, pro-slavery and anti-slavery members of Congress passionately debated the issue. Finally, in 1854, Illinois Senator Stephen Douglas came up with another compromise. That crappy law I brought up earlier, the Kansas-Nebraska Act. Congress barely passed it, and President Franklin Pierce signed it into law on May 30th, 1854. It created the territories of Kansas and Nebraska. Well, duh. It got rid of the 3630 line of the Missouri Compromise, and it established popular sovereignty in both territories to solve the slavery issue.
Wait, so they had one big state that was split by the 38th parallel to make slavery allowed or not allowed, and now what they decided to do was split the thing and just move the line and just make two states. But the state border is still the 38th parallel, right? But that's supposed to like give both states their own right to do what they want. Still, so this is where these illogical lines come from. If you look at map of Africa, for example, it looks like someone took a ruler and draw lines on the map, which actually happened. A lot of kings, and there was a council in Europe that actually did that. It's really funny. But yeah, here if you look at the 38th parallel, it's fully straight line, not following any natural borders or forests or rivers. Now I know where it comes from. It always fascinated me, why are some of the state borders so straight? How is it possible? But now I know. People make unnecessary laws. But I would imagine this would end in a war between two states if they do that.
In other words, it allowed the settlers to decide whether or not to have slavery in both territories. I know, what could go wrong, right? Well, a lot went wrong in Kansas. Remember, Missouri was a slave state. Within days of the passage of the Kansas-Nebraska Act, hundreds of pro-slavery Missourians crossed the border into Kansas territory claiming land. They organized and plotted ways to politically influence the region.
Wait, what does it mean to claim land? I think it's connected to something with US not being fully colonized, so people were still free to settle the land. It was owned by no one, so they could go and claim. But was it the case right now? You could just go and say, this patch of land is mine now, build a fence around it and it's yours, and suddenly you have a voting right for that state, right? Because you live there. Is that how it works? Or how does the claiming land thing work? I don't know.
Days after the act passed, Missourians put together a meeting at Salt Creek Valley, just west of Fort Leavenworth in Kansas, creating the Squatters Claim Association and calling for people to sacrifice their lives by settling in Kansas to ensure it became a slave state. Not to be outdone, the Massachusetts Immigrant Aid Company, organized in, Massachusetts, an abolitionist hotbed, to help settlers move to Kansas to make sure it became a free state. It's
so crazy. I know I've watched many videos about this, but still the slave state, non-slave state, whichever it becomes, it's such a hot debate that states, 500 or 1,000 kilometers away, more than 1,000 actually, Massachusetts, are still very interested in the business and are trying to organize people going and moving to that state, even though back then they didn't have cars, telephones, they had very primitive telephones. But it's very hard to organize people just moving in a state 1,000 and more kilometers away if you don't have that transportation like we do have nowadays. This must have been a very hot topic. I couldn't comprehend how big of a deal this is. It seems to me crazy, truly crazy. There's a new territory and everybody has to live or die basically for it to become a free state or a slave state.
Its first 29 settlers on July 29th, 1854.
I'm standing in Robinson Park in Lawrence, Kansas. This is Founders Rock. Those 29 settlers ended up here. And now I'm just going to read from that placard that's on this rock. To the pioneers of Kansas who, in devotion to human freedom, came into a wilderness, suffered hardships, and faced dangers and death to found this state in righteousness. These were the first to come under the auspices of the New England Immigrant Aid Company. They founded the city of Lawrence. The first party of 29 men left Massachusetts July 17th, 1854, and arrived here August 1st, 1854. And you'll see here that...
Wait, so it took them July, August... Hey, It took them only 2 weeks to arrive, right? 2 weeks or a little bit more, which is pretty fast. I guess, I mean, of course, they had already railways going through the country, not the transcontinental railway, but other railways also. It makes traveling a lot faster. Well, actually, it kind of makes sense now that Massachusetts is organizing people to move there, because they could travel with 2 weeks. It's not that bad, actually. I thought it's gonna be like 2 months or something. But still, it feels like, if you think about my country today, and if you think about the counties, for example, something is happening in some kind of an island, we have Saaremaa, for example, so every other county would be doing, oh, you should do this, you should do that, and they will organize some movements there. It seems like they're nosy, you know, they don't mind their own business, they're just, it's not their thing to say. But in this case, I don't know, I guess Massachusetts felt personally responsible that a state would be a free state. It has to be a free state, we have to move people there. This is a mindset that I don't understand anymore. Of course, hey, don't get me wrong, I'm on the side of the union, don't get me wrong, that I don't, no slavery bad. But still, the way they do it, mind boggles me still.
All the names are listed, and then below, the second party of 114 left Boston August 29th, 1854, and arrived September 15th, 1854. So there are the original settlers of Lawrence.
Which is probably why the main road that goes through downtown is called Massachusetts Street. The Massachusetts Immigrant Aid Company sent hundreds more to Kansas, and other folks who became known as, quote, Free Staters followed them, settling in places like Topeka, Manhattan, and Osawatomie. When pro-slavery settlers and anti-slavery settlers all rushed in, things were strangely calm for the first few months. However, that all changed on March 30th, 1855. On that day, a flood of Missourians, known as border ruffians, crossed the border into Kansas to illegally vote for a bunch of pro-slavery candidates. Likely because of that, pro-slavery candidates won across the state, and the Kansas Territorial Legislature was almost entirely made up of them. That's when the violence really took off. From 1855 to 1858, some of the worst violence the United States has ever seen took place in Kansas Territory between pro-slavery and anti-slavery groups. It was so bad, it became known as Bleeding Kansas. Historians sometimes argue the American Civil War really began in Kansas. In addition to small skirmishes here and there, some major battles occurred during this time. On November 21st...
Wait, I thought we'd have some kind of hatred or just some kind of beef, but we have major battles, people killing each other on the battlefield. This is war. This is war between states, actually. Oh, I wouldn't have even guessed the US states have war with each other. This is strange.
1855, a pro-slavery dude named Franklin Coleman shot a free stater named Charles Dow. Coleman said he was acting in self-defense, and the county sheriff, Samuel Jones, must have believed him, choosing to arrest Dow's Free State friend, Jacob Branson, instead. After a Free State mob broke Brandon out of jail, Jones and a bunch of pro-slavery forces, most of them from Missouri, made their way to Lawrence, preparing to destroy the whole town. To
destroy the whole town. People have come there from far away, settled down, they have kids and wives and families and grandmas, and now you're gonna destroy that. I mean, back then you built homes with your own hands. It took you months to put up a house, even more, maybe a year if you just work around the clock. And they just want to destroy it. No. I got the wrong impression. I thought this is some kind of shouting, hey, you're bad, you want slaves. No, we want free state. But this is war, actually.
Free State hub. Lawrence heard about them coming and raised a militia of 800 men to defend the city.
800.
The infamous abolitionist John Brown and his sons were among them. Leaders on both sides were able to sign a peace treaty before any major violence broke out. However, the next year, someone shot Sheriff Jones as he was attempting to arrest Free State settlers in Lawrence. But they did not shoot the deputy, and then drove the wounded Jones out of town. Jones eventually came back with Federal Marshal Israel Donaldson and about 800 pro-slavery dudes, many from out of the state and some from as far away as South Carolina. As they camped outside of Lawrence, David Rice Atchison, the former Missouri senator, gave a speech to fire them up. On May 21st, 1856, Jones, Donaldson, and their forces destroyed and looted much of Lawrence, including bringing down the Eldridge Hotel and the printing offices of 2 Free State state newspapers.
It's still, I know it's not a civil war and you couldn't compare it with the monstrosity it is, but still, feels stupid. There's a third state. And all of these people, most of them come from other states that are not connected to this state. They come there, they settle there, and then they start to war and kill each other there. For what? For the new area. There's no people even living there. For the new area to become a slave state or to become a free state. I'm sorry, don't get offended, but it seems a little bit stupid. Honestly, this seems a bit stupid. Alright, enough of this. You know what is not stupid? The Estonian Youtuber Cup competition. Look at this awesome cup. Yeah, magnificent. Magnifico. Alright, truly, you should get the cup and drink from it every time you watch the video. I do that. Usually I drink green tea, but today I have coffee. It's a special day, you know. But now we will jump into the Estonian Youtuber Cup competition. Maybe we have some countries joining the list today. Welcome back, my friends, to the Hall of Fame. Yes, behind me you see all of the states from the United States represented in the Estonian Youtuber Cup competition. We will have 7 new names, 7 new orders, and some states will get pretty high numbers. The first dude is called John Miwa. He has already gotten a cup. This is the second time I mention his name, so a true hero. He got actually 2 cups. What a man, what a god. His cups go to California. The hometown is really strange. It's Rancho Palos Verdes. I don't know, it's some kind of Mexican name or I don't know, 3 names. Well, California gets 2 points. Way to go, California, picking up the other states. The next one is Carl Hemphill. Isn't hemp like a weed or cannabis hemp, right? But it's hemp. Hemp Hill, so you're Weed Hill. Smoking that joint, my friend. Your hometown is called, are you ready for this? Okonomawaka. Yeah, this sounds like the native tribe living in North America doing their fire rituals, the rain dance. Okonomawaka, Okonoma. Yeah, truly cool that you have these names still in use. Otherwise these languages would die out, but now we have Okonomawaka. Truly cool. That's in Wisconsin. We have Mr. Cody McDonald. Yes, I accidentally happen to love McDonald's. I do eat quite a lot there because I like it. I know in America it's considered the most trash of the trash, but in Estonia it's quite good actually. It doesn't compare to America. In America it tastes bad compared to Estonian McDonald's. So, Mr. McDonald, way to go. You live in a city called Fitzgerald, so it's super German, Fitzgerald. But it's in Georgia, so super south. We have a man called Jill Mitchell. 2 L's and 2 L's again, we have 4 L's. People with a lot of L's get the cup. Jill Mitchell. Jill could be also I think you're a man, I'm not sure, I don't really know. The statistics would say that you are. You live in Norwood, Massachusetts. We have a guy called Bill Burke. Mr. BB. You live in Florence, Alabama. There was also a song about Alabama. There was a song about West Virginia, right? But I know another one about Alabama. There's like a very famous song. A lot of people sing it in America. What's the Alabama song? I can't remember it right now. But let's have the point. And now for the last but not least, we have a guy called Peter Aniko. Now he became a patron, I think 2 videos ago, something like that. 3 videos ago, a true hero. A patron, got the cup. A hero of his state and a hero of my channel. Peter, you're from Towson, not Townsend, but Towson, Maryland. That is it for today's video. Tomorrow we'll be back with another 7 orders and 7 new names. And I do hope we have some new countries also. But if you get the cup, I have to tell you, if you get it, the waiting time, the queue for it to be mentioned in the video is about 2 to 3 weeks now. It takes time, sorry, I can't do it any faster. I try to do a video every day. But your name will be mentioned with your hometown and state, but it takes some time, so patience, my friends. Back to the video. These were the names, they brought honor to the states and to the hometowns. If you want to do the same, the link is in the description below. Go and get the cup, 1 is enough. You'll put 1 point behind the name of your state. But also, my friends, it's not only the cups, it's not only the videos. There are also Patreons who keep this whole thing going. They make sure that if the Corona thing is going around and YouTube is a bit weaker, You know, YouTube is drunk sometimes. It says no views and 12 likes or something. Whatever happens to YouTube, patrons are there to make sure everything still works smoothly. So I will name you 3 new patrons who elevate this channel. We have Mr. Josh Peabody. Thank you for becoming a patron, Josh. We have Mr. Snoitsuk P. Yes, he sent me a photo also. Look, that is him. He's a nice dude. He got the cup, now he's a patron. Truly a nice dude, supporting the channel. Not many of them out there. And now we have, I think, a woman, Melania Bowell. Yeah, if you're a man, I am so sorry, I don't know, but it sounds like a girl's name. Melania Bowell. Or is it Melanie? Maybe. A melon. Thank you. These were the 3 people, but now we will go on with the beef between Kansas and Missouri.
This became known as the sacking of Lawrence. In retaliation, a few days later, John Brown, his sons, and a few other abolitionists murdered 5 allegedly pro-slavery settlers camped near Potawatomi Creek in Franklin County. This became known as the Potawatomi Massacre. Brown went into hiding, but Captain Henry Pate captured and arrested 2 of his sons. On June 2nd, Brown caught up to Pate and a group of Missourians he was leading near what today is Baldwin City. After some fighting, Brown and his forces captured 22 of Pate's men and held them for ransom. Brown agreed to release them after Pate released his sons. This became known as the Battle of Blackjack.
Yeah, this is the Wild West. I mean, there's no laws. There's a captain, meaning that there must be a military hierarchy somewhere. Captain, right? Captain. If the captain says something, it means something. But there's a captain. Take your sons. So you gather a bunch of men and you go arrest some captain's men and then you exchange people. This is the Wild West. No rules, just you versus the other man.
After this, Brown and his sons went back into hiding, but continuing to lead guerrilla attacks in northeastern Kansas. On August 16th, in what became known as the Battle of Fort Titus, Free Staters attacked the fortress of the pro-slavery dude Henry Titus near Lecompton. They captured and imprisoned pro-slavery folks, taking them back to Lawrence. On August 30th, General John William Reed and between 250 and 400 border ruffians attacked the Free Staters town of Osawatomie. Reed had planned on destroying the town as well as doing the same to Topeka and Lawrence later. John Brown led forces there.
Why would you destroy the town? Again, people weren't rich obviously back then. They were just settlers. They didn't have much, but destroying it meaning that you would have to rebuild it later. Even if I would be an evil man doing those things, I'd think about with my head. I would settle my own people there, not destroy it, because it takes a lot of time to rebuild. So just destroying something seems fairly stupid to me, even if it's your enemies.
Against Reed, but was unable to defend the town. After Brown's forces retreated, Reed and his men looted and burned Osawatomie. Still, Brown emerged as a hero after that battle. Today, there's a museum and a park there in his honor. For more context about John Brown, here is the cynical historian.
Hey, Safer here. John Brown has often been lionized for his ideals. I don't think people nowadays would argue against his cause, complete abolition of slavery. When he died in 1859, in service to that cause, people sang their praise of him in a familiar tune.
John Brown's body lies a mouldering in the grave, but his soul goes marching on.
That same tune eventually became the main song for the Union Army during the Civil War, but with different lyrics, which was called the Battle Hymn of the Republic. Suffice it to say, he was a martyr for the cause of abolitionism, but his methods were more akin to terrorism than most would like to admit.
Yeah.
Before becoming a radical, he had suffered many financial hardships and even failed to become a Unitarian minister. But when he moved to Springfield, Massachusetts, he turned the place into a hub for the Underground Railroad. This wasn't violent yet. It was his actions during Bleeding Kansas that gave him a reputation for violence on behalf of abolitionism. He was essentially an insurgent, not unlike those he was fighting. Once that conflict calmed down, he turned his sights on Virginia. He gathered forces and attacked an armory at Harper's Ferry in the hopes of starting a massive slave revolt, but was pretty quickly defeated by the U.S. cavalry under the command of Robert E. Lee. Yes, that one. After being captured, he was hanged for treason. Even before his execution, he was being mythologized as an abolitionist symbol. He had killed for his cause, but many accepted that. Harriet Tubman and Henry David Thoreau even supported the raid on Harper's Ferry. Thoreau succinctly analogized Brown's guerrilla tactics.
This is a perfect example of how if we support some ideas and people are working for these ideas, even with great violence, we do support these people, not thinking about that they are the same terrorists, they are the same violent men who kill others, but that doesn't mean that we support the cause means that you can do it with violence. No, everything can be done without violence. If you use violence to do it, you're already a lesser man. Doesn't matter whose side you're fighting on. But it actually matters a little bit. Even if you take the countries nowadays, let's take the biggest rivalries, US versus Russia, US versus China. Both sides use violence to get what they want. But I would for sure pick the West for the East, because Russia, China, they are truly evil empires nowadays. The things they do to their own people, it doesn't even compare. So there's a slight difference. Who do you pick? But still, if I could, I wouldn't pick any violence.
With other movements by calling it an abolition filibuster army. Most filibusters were slavery expansionists, who tried to take more land to the south of the United States by overthrowing governments themselves, most famous of which was William Walker, who successfully attacked Nicaragua in 1855 for the purpose of extending slavery there. So these two were intertwined in Western lore. As historian Richard Slotkin says, the cases of Brown and Walker have a definite symmetry. These people were mythologized as heroes of abolition and slavery, but they were ultimately fighting over the extension of slavery, which would eventually lead to the Civil War. John Brown became the martyred hero of the Union, despite being executed by that very Union for treason.
Thanks, Cypher. So as the violence raged on back in Kansas, both sides tried to establish governments.
They even set up different capitals of the territory and different constitutions. There was the Topeka Constitution, which banned slavery, the Lecompton Constitution, which attempted to allow slavery. While the Lecompton Constitution was being debated, a free state legislature was established up in Leavenworth. The Leavenworth Constitution not only banned slavery, but provided protections for women's rights. Honestly, though, it didn't really matter what was going on with politics. People were continuing to kill each other, man. However, things did seem to calm down a bit in 1858. The last significant event of Bleeding Kansas, until the Civil War broke out anyway, was the Maria de Zine Massacre. That was when Charles Hamilton, a pro-slavery dude from Georgia, crossed the border from Missouri and captured 11 unarmed free staters. He made them stand out in a field and shot them all, killing 5.
After the territory of Kansas,
I don't get it. You have weapons, right? You support the suffering of millions of black people. You support it, and then you're ready to kill other people for it, for the suffering to continue. What kind of a monster would do this? It's, in my eyes, I'm sorry if I offend people, I don't know, from Texas or the Confederate Army, but yes, monsters, truly. I understand if they were fighting for their homes and for their families, not to be taken away, but if they were fighting for the slavery to continue, then they were monsters, not afraid to say it.
this banned slavery with the adoption of the Wyandotte Constitution, the violence finally went away. For a couple of years anyway.
Once the Civil War broke out, things got crazy again. By this time, those defending Kansas as a free state became known as Jayhawkers, and those in Missouri fleeing Union control and loyal to the South became known as Bushwhackers.
Who comes up with these names? I love them.
Anyway, on September 23rd, 1861, some Jayhawkers, led by James Lane, who is a senator for Kansas and just as radical as John Brown was, stormed the town of Osceola, Missouri, freeing 200 slaves and killing 9 local citizens, then plundering and setting fire to the town. But these Jayhawkers didn't stop there. They terrorized the western border of Missouri. In retaliation, yeah, that's retaliation. The cycle of violence just keeps going, all right? In retaliation for the sacking of Osceola and this terrorizing of the border, among other things, a dude named William Quantrill organized a bunch of bushwhacker guerrilla soldiers to plan an attack on, you guessed it, Lawrence. Lawrence was where many of the Jayhawker guerrilla fighters came from. In particular, it's where Senator James Lane lived. On August 21st, 1863, Quantrill and 300 fellow bushwhackers invaded Lawrence, killing every man and boy in sight. They burned down most of the city and destroyed everything in their path. Remember...
What the hell? This is massacre. This is genocide almost. Yeah, this is genocide. Destroying some group of people for their, I don't know, their qualities. That something for what they have, something for what they are, or where they live. None of the boys and women and old people were guilty for living in that city, but they were killed. Why? Why would you do that? No. It's hard to watch this video. There is a lot of blood between those states. But hey, knowing this now, how do you get on now? How do you get on nowadays, knowing this 150 years ago this happened?
Remember the Eldridge Hotel? They got burned down during the sacking of Lawrence? Yeah, they got burned down again. Here is the Eldridge Hotel today. They rebuilt it yet again. Quantrill and his crew ended up killing 164 civilians. It was known as the Lawrence Massacre, or Quantrill's Raid. And I made a video about it a while back. You should... check it out and stuff. After the Lawrence Massacre, Union General Thomas Ewing Jr. determined that Quantrill recruited most of his bushwhackers from 4 western Missouri counties that all bordered Kansas. Those 4 counties were also where Jayhawkers kept invading, so he decided to order everyone living in the rural areas of those 4 counties out. Those who could prove their allegiance to the Union could stay, but had to live on military outposts and had to completely abandon their farms. Ewing's order, called General Order Number 11, sent soldiers...
This already sounds like the Soviet Union. If you have orders with numbers already and you have general... If you would change the general to General Secretary Chairman and the order would be, I don't know, 150, this would be the Soviet Union already.
To the 4 counties to force everyone out and burn the place to the ground. They killed animals, stole stuff, and killed civilians who did not cooperate. The 4 counties were burned so much they were nicknamed the Burnt District. It became a wasteland, and to this day, 156 years later, towns in these counties aren't doing as well economically as in neighboring counties. After the Civil War ended, things finally calmed down at the border of the 2 states. The Kansas City metropolitan area also became an area that neutralized relations between residents of the 2 states. But the legacy of the border war continued for generations, mostly through the rivalry of athletic teams from the 2 biggest universities in each state.
Yes, this is good. Put your anger into sports, but don't kill each other and each other's families. Just live each other out through the sports, you know?
University of Kansas and the University of Missouri. In fact, even the mascots reflect the border war. The University of Kansas is home of the Jayhawks, named after the Jayhawkers of the Civil War era. And the University of Missouri is home of the Tigers, named after the militia unit that defended western Missouri from the invading Jayhawkers. Over the years, the rivalry between KU and Mizzou has been one of the most intensely hateful rivalries in all of college sports. In fact, in the early days of football matchups, Civil War veterans from both sides literally sat in the stands and booed at each other.
Hey, better than shooting at each other, am I right?
Yeah, truly. Yes, but through sports you're not hurting as much people. Of course, if you're a Russian football hooligan or a British, I don't know, Manchester United fan, you will hurt people, but that's bad. Well, that was a long video, a lot of history behind it, and a lot of blood. More blood than I would have guessed, for sure. I thought it's, some kind of a mild, we have a dislike for each other, we don't really talk to each other like a cold shoulder, but no, there's full-out massacres happening. So, nowadays, how do you get on nowadays? I understand you have this hate rivalry in the sports, but that's alright, you know, sports is fine. But do you have anything else? Do you have any violence going on outside of the sport? My friends, I'll try to upload as soon as I can. I presume every day. I'll try to do it every day. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being a patron and getting the cups. It's wonderful. Go and get the cup and put your state here. We have 3 more states to put on the boards. Then we have the whole of the United States. If you know your home state is not represented, go and get the cup. Link is in the description below. And as always, my friends, until my next video, stay cool and bye bye.